Okay. What it was about?
Hymn to the Aten.
Ah, and where did you get this?
I saw it online. I saw the actual English online with the hieroglyphs like a year or two ago, and I thought it was gorgeous.
This
And
is the one I translated for you,
that's the
right?
one I sent you. Yeah, I sent to you the lyrics a while ago, and then you did it on the microphone, which was so helpful. And then I sung the song. So, I mean, I have all the English, and it just was so, I like it because it's not about secular things like about farming and about stuff like that. It's more of like ethereal. It's about the
Yes,
sun,
yes.
about the power of the sun. And it reminded me of the sun rising and like the adoration of the sun. So it just kind of all came together.
So truly, it was brilliant.
Well, I'm glad you like it. And you know what? You're actually on there somewhere, hidden. Because this is really interesting, but you know how I always walked around with that little recorder? And we would pop into a random place, and I mean, I would always have, like, if I was just singing a tune, I'd record it. It's kind of like an amalgamation of different recordings that were all done in Egypt. That's the background. And I did that in the studio, tied them together, added instruments, and then made the voice over it. So all of that background music, besides the instruments, was recorded on sites, random places. And it's like you're tapping into something when you're there.
As I told you, this is what the feeling I got. Like I feel it familiar, you know, as we say, chemistry between me and this song.
That's because, well, you're also singing bass on a lot of it.
Look, if we talk about Aten, so it will not be sun rising, it will be before sunset.
Right.
Which is another dramatic view for the sun.
Right.
It is actually very important story, and this is what we're gonna tell our people in Akhitaton, in the modern name Amarna. What does it mean, Aten, and what is the cycle of Aten? And is Aten was a new invention by Akhenaten, or it was already there? Because most of the people think that Akhenaten invented Aten, which is not true.
Right.
He recalled the cycle. It was an older cycle.
It's interesting you should say that, because I wrote it like a cycle. It starts the way it ends, because I'm looking at it like sunrise to sunset, and then it starts over again. So you could technically loop that song, because the very beginning is actually the very end, and it is a complete cycle. So I kind of was thinking that when I was writing it.
Very interesting. And you know, it's the cycle number 4 from the 5 cycles. Okay, I think I explained it one day, but I'm preparing a short lecture about the 5 cycles.
Right.
1 is the dawn time. 2 is the pre-noon. 3 pre-noon is the dawn time is Kibber, the scarab, the beginning. And then like from 9 to 10 a.m. this is Ra. And then 12 noon exactly is Atom. Perfect, complete in the middle of the sky. And then we have number 4 around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is Aton, the biggest sun and the extreme heat. Okay, and this is the time, if we can compare between this and any other stories we know, or like Mistress, this is the time of Atlantis.
Oh, yes.
In my opinion, there is great similarities, if it's not the same story, that the people of the cycle of Aton were extremely developed, but it was great ego also at the same time. Right. And that ego is the reason that they ended the cycle, the curve of the civilization collapsed, and then Amun cycle, which is the sunset, beginning of darkness, started.
Yep.
So Akhenaten was born during the 5th cycle, Amun cycle, and he didn't like this cycle. So he wanted to bring back the previous cycle, Aton, with the powers, with the philosophy. And this is also one of my ways to describe Akhenaten, not as the one who worshipped one god, the religious man. No, no, he was a philosopher.
Right.
Akhenaten was more like a philosopher, a scientist also, if we can say, astrologist also. Okay, but he was far away, in my opinion, from religion. His revolution against Amun-Ra wasn't about religion at all. It was about philosophy, about energy, about control. His main problem was with Amun-Ra priest. Maybe not Amun-Ra himself as a psychic, but it was with Amun-Ra priest.
Yes, they had too much power.
Yes. So
you said Aten or Aten?
Look, if you listen to my hieroglyphic lectures, I said we are very sure about the consonant, T, N for sure, but it is Aten, we are not sure. It is Aten, so we still are not very sure it is Aten or Aten.
So you could be changeable.
But I know some people are not happy when I'm using my local experience. We do have a word called Atun in Arabic language, and it means a big basket of fire. Something like the sun disk, but it is very strong fire. You know, when you have a camp and you make a fire in the middle, okay, but something huge, something, you know, from like 10 meters, exactly, but very strong. So this is, we call it Atun. So I believe it is Aten or Atun, not Aten.
I don't think it's Aten either. I don't know why. That's just my guess. But yeah, that's very interesting with the fire, because that's probably where the etymology of that word came from.
I believe so.
Right.
And this is always my style. When I find a modern word, either in English also or in Arabic, and I found it matches the meaning, so I depend on the pronunciation. Like there is a famous word I found called shadow. Okay, the meaning of shadow is shadow. Okay, and I learned that Cleopatra, we say it Cleopatra, but it is written Cleopatra. So T and D are replaceable.
Right.
So I said, okay, it's not shadow, it is shadow, and it means shadow. So it is ancient Egyptian word, not actual English word. It was taken from the ancient Egyptian. Okay, and that's the case. But I see some people, they're not happy with this and say, Mohammed, stop using this. But I can't, because
that makes perfect logical sense. If you're looking for the root of a word, it's something that's been used for hundreds of thousands of years. There has to be a tie. So for people to dismiss that, it doesn't even follow logic or scientific reason, because that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like the word Susan also. Do you know someone called Susan?
Yes, I know a lot of people named Susan.
Okay, Susan means lotus or flower.
Oh.
Susan means flower. And we have the same way or the same name in modern Egypt called Suzanne. This is how we say it, Suzanne.
Right.
Not Susan in a quick way. We say it Suzanne. Also, it means flower.
Right.
Okay, if we open the Egyptian dictionary, we will find the word session. Session means lotus flower. Okay, so we know also that ish and is are replaceable. Okay, so Susan, session, Sushan, because we read it without the vowels, session, so it could be Sushan. So Sushan, Susan is that, I believe, the modern Susan.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, even modern day, you could be Susan, Suzanne. So even modern day, we slightly changed that word to fit different names. So what could happen over hundreds of thousands of years? It's actually surprising that they're still so similar to the Egyptian.
Yes.
Right.
And the most famous word I use, Deshret, desert.
Right.
Deshret means desert or desert. Okay. Very clear.
Yeah, that's pretty infallible, I would say. I don't know why people argue with you about that. It's common sense. It's common sense.
So, okay, back to the song, Akhenaten. Do you think when we will go to Amarna, we're going to visit, unfortunately, few remains, or very, very, very few or little remains from the previous palace of Akhenaten. Okay, but do you think that there was an actual songs were being how do you call it, sing there in the temple?
I absolutely 100% think without a doubt, and all the temples that they were singing.
As a kind of just singing, like for fun, or like nowadays just a talent, or what do you believe?
No, I believe it was functional. I believe it had to do with the purpose of activating the sites, activating the people around it. And as a matter of fact, I think it was like a holy interaction. I would think that priests and priestesses would do it in conjunction. I think that not only are the places built for acoustics, but I've been also researching that acoustics were programmed into the actual architecture, which you can tell based on when you're there and you can hear the exact frequencies or a prime note. You can feel the whole place reverberate regardless of where you are. And I feel like singing probably would have been the primary use of music. Like they would have probably not had a lot of instruments, or who knows what they had at what time, but something people always have had is their voice. So I also think that that is why today in churches and mosques and temples, that's why people sing. It is an echo of a memory from the distant past of that was basically the foundation of how they worshipped. And it still is, and we don't even realize where we got it from.
Exactly.
It's India, it's everywhere.
Your example is 100% true. That yes, what we are practicing in our mosques or churches or even synagogues is a copy or imitation from the ancient Egyptian temples.
Right.
You know, for many years when I used to visit the sites, like especially like the obelisk and Aswan and Dandara temple, there is a room for a video lecture, and I don't know why I didn't attend or to see the video talking about the site, but in many cases I decided to do this, okay, to understand, to have a good idea about the Egyptology opinion. One of the things surprised me at Dandara, that when they talk about the temple and all the ceremonies they do there, they talk about healing, and they talk about vibrations, and they talk about sound in that video. And I'll make sure when we go there in April, we must attend and watch the video. And I love the voice of Omar Sharif. He has a great sense, and he will like send you the message. It will be like a subliminal message. Maybe he will not say it in clear words, but you will receive it with your heart. So truly the place, Dandara Temple, it's a great example for what you are saying about the acoustic design, about the resonant, about the power of the sound. And in my opinion, the high ceiling was made specially to fit this function.
Yeah, they're all, it seems like, I would say 90% of the places that we go have acoustical properties. And I would go as far as to say that beyond engineers and geologists and these specialties that come together, academia, to go to ancient Egypt, I would think probably the most important people that need to go to Egypt are musicians. Because if you're going to actually tap into what they were doing and figure it out and reverse engineer it, you should be doing what they were doing. And they, you know, they were singing. They were creating music and acoustics and vibrations, and that is what the buildings were made for. So to experience Egypt in that way is experiencing it the way the ancient Egyptians really did. And the only thing we can be positive about is that they had voices. We don't, I mean, I honestly, we don't know if they were playing instruments in there, but it's very interesting, especially like in churches today, and even in mosques, I would say, but I'm not quite sure, maybe you can correct me on this, but there's pretty much no instruments. Everything's a cappella. There's just the voice, right? There's just voices. There's just people singing. I mean, in modern day churches, they've added instruments, but a lot of the most holy Latin, for example, masses, are a cappella. there's something about the human voice tapping into those frequencies and those, some people do even say you would have experiences. You could tap into your third eye. You could almost transmit yourself to another place. It's like bilocation. And with music, you can do that. And they made these places acoustic for a reason. And that is the best way to experience Egypt, in my opinion. And I think that more people need to delve into that research.
I agree with you. Yes, but I don't say that it was 100% using the human voice only. I think it was more like 80%. But there are some instruments, and I will make sure to show you and our clients, especially in Fila Temple, Isis Temple, that we do have an instrument, we call it harp.
Yep.
And harp in different actually designs. It is not just one design. I saw like 4 designs. And we do have something looks like guitar, but in a smaller, or how do you call it, thinner, longer instrument. Of course, drums. Also, they had flute, or what we call it in the Egyptian way or Arabic way, nai.
Yeah, the nai is one of my frequent samples on my music.
Yes. And in Egypt, we have many types of nai. We have short nai, and we have a long nai. We don't call it nai, we call it like arhul. It is like 2 meters long. Imagine someone having an instrument.
So it's a very bassy, very low.
Ah, yes. So we have different types of instrument. Okay, either with a string or plowing. So yes, but I agree with you that the main element is the human voice itself.
Right, and how far back? Like if we're going even pre-dynastic, then are we sure? Yeah. Do we know what they had? Or is it even possible? A lot of times I think have instruments come from other places too. Could there be an amalgam of instruments from Asiatic countries, or because I mean we're going back with history that might necessarily not be in a textbook. So maybe there was other things going on there that we're not sure about if we're not told in history books exactly what's going on. So the only thing I'm saying, like before pre-dynastic Egypt, the only thing we're sure of, or in ancient times, is that they had a voice.
For sure.
I mean, I think it's the easiest way to tap into the energies of the sites is with the human voice, because it's the sure thing. We know that they all had vocal cords.
Exactly. And I don't know if you remember when I said the famous story about the word open sesame.
Right.
I always say it was based in a true story, that the human voice in a certain way can open things, can activate things.
Right.
So the open sesame is not an imaginary story.
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe not the same way, of course, like was made in the Egyptian movies or Hollywood movies, but I think it was like a hint or like an example for something truly happened in the ancient days.
Right. And there's also still a place in India today it's claimed that it's still unopened, that certain notes and vowels will open the door, and it's still sealed to this day. I forget the name of it. I wish I could remember it, but I think that truly one of the most important endeavors in understanding ancient Egypt is rediscovering the acoustics of the sites and the music.
You know, you mentioned something very important, that we had, of course, Egyptologists, engineers, geologists, which many of them were forbidden or didn't have the chance to come and to do analysis. But recently they do, like Robert Schoch, like Christopher Dunn and others. But here is something very interesting. When you ask about the Egyptian musical tools, they will tell you, okay, we have some. What about the note? No information. What about the kind of music? No information. Which is not something rarely depicted, or we don't see it often. No, we see it almost everywhere. and we see it in hundreds of tombs. We see it in the Egyptian Museum. So why no one, I will not say no one, let's say if we talk about the official level, they are not interested to know the ancient Egyptian music. Yes, you are right. Why they don't try to give us the ancient Egyptian note? I think because they are trying to hide this, or like they don't want us to know this deep secret.
Right.
Because this will be like a big gate or huge gate to cross to maybe like clear evidence or a cure, or I'm not sure, but it just came to my mind that we are not trying to understand the ancient Egyptian music.
And it's probably the most important thing. I mean, I honestly believe that. And it's interesting because maybe a lot of the music was through synergy, because I've noticed if we go to random places, or I always bring my recorder to Egypt and I'll just hum a tune. I've noticed that when I go to certain places, and it's very interesting, certain music just pops right into my head and I'll just start singing it. And it's different depending on the site. And I've noticed a lot of other things that I'm studying in regards to, if you go certain places with certain people and you happen to tone for a moment, that all people who aren't even musicians are immediately in the zone. They immediately know almost psychically what notes you're going to hit next. And there's a synergy. So to me, it's as if the site itself is speaking the music to you if you just tune into it. So maybe they didn't need to write down the music for a lot of these places. And maybe the music changed depending on the cycle, depending on where we are in the zodiac. It could have so many different, depending on where the sun is at that time of day and how the site is energized, it could also change the song. So maybe they didn't need music because they were literally tuning in to the site itself.
You know, I have a very strange, maybe crazy opinion. I can tell you where you can find the note. And I want you to try to test this. The pillar's shape is the note.
Yes.
Each temple has special design of the pillars, simply round with designs like they call it the reeds of the flower. Open lotus, closed lotus, open papyrus, closed papyrus. So I think this is the element which makes, or if I can say, design the note.
And that makes perfect sense because Swallow de Lubitsch talks about this, John Anthony West talks about this. The actual way a place is built decides its acoustics. So they built everything meticulously. And it's not just about the beauty, it's also about what will reverb in that particular space, or what sound, what's the primary sound or note that will make the place reverb. And you can actually find that very easily. You could do it in your bathroom. You can go in any room and do this. You do a glissando from a low note to a high note, and there'll always be one note that'll stand out. And that's the note of either the site or the room that is the highest reverberation. But also to that, I've noticed with random strangers that we've gone to Egypt with, that we've later become great friends with, but one of the things that happens is that people even who aren't musicians, who don't even seem to have a great sense of tone, as soon as they're in one of these places and they hear that note and they tune into that, they also seem to display qualities of a musician that's been trained. They'll be able to sing with you, and you can do chord changes or whatnot, and they'll be right there with you. It's almost as if there is a download process or a synergy between people when they hit that zone and they get in that specific frame of mind where they can almost channel the music and not just the note. But it's a most profound experience. It's mind-blowing.
And of course, the second element is the stone they choose. Sometimes we have sandstone, limestone, granite, alabaster, which is a combination of stones, and I believe each one gives a different effect for.
Of course. Because all crystals and all stones have different density and are made up of different things, and it all creates different vibrations. The vibration is what you're tuning into. So it is very scientific, actually, but it's also an art, and it's also a spiritual, almost religion, because you are becoming one with that site. You are tuning into it literally, and you are matching the vibration of it.
So this will be your first time to go to Amarna, right? We are going to see together some amazing tombs up at the mountain. One of the tombs, back to your good observation when you said we are singing and using music, especially in the churches now. One of those tombs, which is way up at the mountain, it's like more than 60 meters high, okay? But it's a long way because it's a ramp shape or an angle, was converted to be a small church. So here is the question, why?
It's because it had great acoustics. Probably not the only reason. It's probably a sacred site.
Exactly, and truly I don't call it echo. The resonance is very, very deep and very strong in this tomb, if I can call it tomb. Okay.
Right.
So here is a clear evidence that the priest who decided to use it or to convert this site as a church, he understood the benefit. He understood that when they are doing any rituals, just pronouncing the word in the right way will be like a cure, at least for the spirit. Maybe not physical, but I do believe it's also have physical effect, but at least for the spiritual aspect of the human person. Okay.
And I will say this as a nice little note to people that aren't aware of the fact that ancient Egyptian doesn't have the vowels, which I think is done on purpose when it was written in hieroglyphs for a reason. They didn't want the average person to hear how certain things were pronounced, or even like in Hebrew, no vowels. Why? It's something very important about the way things are said and sung, and it has to do also with, why do we call spelling spelling? When you spell something, you're casting a spell in a lot of ways. You're creating something out of sound, just like supposedly the universe was created with one sound. It goes all the way back to that. Sound creates, sound is, Tesla said vibration is everything, is the key to everything.
Exactly. I realized that you can use music as very clear message to express about your feeling. If you are angry, you can have certain kind of music. If you are excited, if you are sad, if you are happy, okay. Unlike any other way, in my opinion, music will be very clear. So I think this was the type of music was played in the Egyptian temples, as you said before, that they are not all the same. Not only different temples, but I believe sections also inside each temple. So not the whole temple is not playing one note, maybe, because that's why we have so many side rooms in the temples, and I'm using Dandara as an example again. Okay, we have many side rooms, Karnak temple, also Luxor temple. Okay, I think to play different notes.
Oh, definitely.
What do you think about this?
I would think that if you even broke it down, like simplify it as a good analogy, if you're trying to unlock something that has a padlock on it, you have to put different numbers in to unlock the padlock. So it makes sense that you would have different notes to do the same thing. And I also think that overtones are very important. And I have discussed this briefly before on other videos and on my website, that overtones, when you sing an overtone, you change the overtone of one note. You'll be singing one primary note, but you can change all the overtones over it depending on the vowel. The vowel is how you manipulate overtones. So I think it's very interesting that the vowel is taken out of the ancient Egyptian language. I feel like that is a key lock that is very important to figure out how the function of music worked in ancient Egypt. And in order to do that, you have to change vowels, and also you have to change notes. to hit different frequencies. And it's very interesting when you overtone sing in certain places in Egypt that you have this sensation of everything changes. It goes from just sounding like notes put together to the entire room could vibrate. And overtone singing, I think, is very important, which leads back to the vowels, which also leads back to different notes. So without a doubt, 100%. I don't think everyone was allowed to do that, though. It would have to be, I think it was certain trained people, probably priests, priestesses, a group of people who were specifically in tune, musicians of the court, or however that went. So it's definitely something that's profoundly important and needs to be investigated. And I'm raising my hand, I'm investigating it.
So yes, as you said, we don't understand that this is connected with our roots.
Right. And there's also an argument today about the 441 megahertz and how we process music digitally today and how it loses some of the resonance and some of the qualities that if you are in a like an American Indian drum circle and you're singing, you're going to be using natural frequencies. A lot of our stuff has been digitized, and it takes away some of the vibrations that you would get from feeling it in like your heart center. But when you're in places like Egypt or doing these things in a more, how do I say, like native Aboriginal way without the recorders, without it being put online, unfortunately, you do lose a lot of that through the digitization of music. It changes the frequencies a bit. So if we could get back to that, I believe that it would change the world. If we got back to doing things in the natural frequencies, the 424 megahertz, the 432, the pi and phi of the natural frequencies, it brings all of the vibrations into a natural balance. So it's something that is an endeavor of mine, and I'm hoping that people come back to that because it will change your psyche. It's healing. There's so many scientific studies on the healing of acoustics and how you can heal certain diseases with certain frequencies, and it goes back all the way to the ancient times, and they knew something. So I think that is the key. It's also the key, I believe, in understanding what might have been ancient technology.
Oh.
How they used ancient technology, and maybe how they even built certain things. They probably used sound and acoustics. So it's very important.
They are all elements in one big cycle.
Right.
Technology, spirituality, music, medicine, they are all elements or items in a big cycle or big circle, serving each other.
Right.
And each one is helping the other, and in the same time receiving help. Like as an example, because of technology, they managed to have the secrets or the how to use this, how to get the function, and after they get the function, they will be able to be smarter or to have better knowledge, so they can enhance technology, and then from technology, it's like endless circle.
Right. And I don't think it's definitely not a mistake that all of these things you're talking about in our day and age have been compartmentalized. This person's the scientist, and this person is the spiritual leader, and this person is a musician, and this is art, and everything is compartmentalized into its separate little compartment. And that's not how the ancient people did it. They married all of that into one thing. And I think in order to understand the technology and understand, we have to use all those tools in our tool belt, because they did. You have to look at it the way they might have looked at it. And our technology is very different than what an ancient technology would have been.
And the ancient Egyptian didn't want us to lose the message, so they created a netter, which is mistakenly explained as a goddess, Hathor. They wanted us to understand, like, this is the message. There is someone or something, or like a netter called Hathor. And according to the basic explanation, she is the goddess of music. Okay, and I meant to say basic because we know, of course, she is deeper than this and contains more or has more meanings. But
Right.
like if you look to any civilization, I think you will find something similar. You will find something, or if I can say it, God or goddess connected with music.
Mm-hmm.
But think that in ancient Egypt it was more concentrated in Hathor. But even all the letters connected with Hathor, like Bes as an example, which is very weird. You know, sometimes you can say, okay, I understand Hathor, and maybe she was just an invention to make the people feel happy and to like have entertainment. But this here is absolutely strange. His look and his shape is not something can fit with music.
And every time we go, we learn more, especially with vibrations and acoustics. That's why I always have my little Zoom recorder in my hand, and I'll be strolling down the street. If something pops in my head, I sing it. Because Egypt has that effect on you. You always want to be ready. You never know when something's going to pop in your head, a tune.
Yes.
It's
Even for me, you know, sometimes when I love to have my camera all the time, but so many times I find things and I don't have the camera, so I feel like guilty. You know, why I don't have the camera?
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to use my little recorder more, because I only had like 13 or 14 on my digital recorder, and inherently in all of those, we were in random places. I would just be humming a tune if I was allowed, or be strolling around like recording something, and all of those little bits and pieces of snippets have ended up being part of an Egyptian song that I've written. And I've basically, in a way, then recorded a piece of that in Egypt when I was inspired at a certain site, or at many sites, and it's as if the place itself is speaking it to you. So in a way, in a kind of a roundabout way, I feel like a lot of this music is ancient Egyptian, because it's something that came to me when I was there, and it just goes right into your head. It's amazing how that works. So there's something to that, and I hope to keep investigating that, and also comparing, you know, I was here and I recorded this, or I was here and I recorded this, and compare with like 1 year for the year before, and see if the same thing's coming out. Because that would also be a very interesting scientific study even. Maybe some people don't consider that scientific. I certainly do. If the same tone or the same tones are coming at you at a certain site, maybe there's something to that. Maybe your body's tapping into what was actually being sung there.
As you said, it will be very interesting, and it's something we need, that musicians or someone must do analysis for the sound and try to tell us what was the ancient Egyptian music, how it was, and the note. We need hard to note the note, which I believe it will be easy job, not hard job, because
it's easy to find a note. It's easy to find a primary note in a site. It's very easy. It takes literally like 10 seconds. It's just going after that. You can find the note very quickly by doing a couple little vocal exercises, and then it pops right out at you. But it's definitely a lot of data collection. This is a lot of data. It's something that you record, or you might listen to later, and you find out a lot, not necessarily even when you're there, but after the fact. That's why it's important when I walk around. I look like I'm interviewing somebody, journalist, but I'm just talking to myself, murmuring to myself half the time. It's pretty funny.
Okay, so I will say goodbye now, because my batteries are very low now.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any question?
I don't have any questions. I would like to say, if anybody else has any questions about sound, music, my role in going on the tours, feel free to message me. You could either private message me, or I will post this video on on Facebook. I'll probably do YouTube as well. And you can ask me questions inside of the comment section. And we'd really love to have you guys come on tour with us. It'll be an amazing experience. Can't wait. Egypt is the place to be, and now's the time to go.